Every electrician knows the 5 times test, but not every electrician knows where it came from and if it was actually ever part of the regs. We hear people say it's been removed, you don't need it anymore, but the truth is, it was never there in the first place. So let's break down the 5 times test, why it existed, what times it's designed to achieve and why all RCDs, including RCBOs, don't always need to behave the same under every test. So guys, let's be crystal clear. The 5 times test never came from BS 7671, okay? It has always been part of the product standards, okay? So product standards are not the same as the wiring standards, i.e. BS 7671. You might have remembered this sort of approach when we talked about the SPD structure. This is how you have to make it. This is the performance it has to achieve. This is how you have to wire it to be compliant with BS 7671 in the UK. So the product standards for RCDs are BS EN 61008, and the product standard for RCBOs is BS EN 61009. Manufacturers use that test to prove that their devices will trip fast enough under fault conditions. It's part of product verification rather than site standards that manufacturers go to prove that their product is safe. So when product testers started including the 5 times test in the testers, they were simply replicating that manufacturing standard and that test that we as manufacturers create to prove that our product is actually safe under those conditions. So it became an industry habit rather than a requirement. So, was it ever in BS 7671? Did you ever need to do it as part of BS 7671 to be signed off? No, BS 7671 never told you to perform a 5 times test. What it did do is say that the RCD had to perform within the correct tripping times and left the method up to you. The 5 times test became common practice because it's a solid test that obviously replicates those tests of the manufacturers and gives you credible evidence that the RCDs you've chosen to use perform as expected. So the wording in BS 7671 never changed. How we started using it changed. And the confusion all started back in and around Amendment 2. So when Amendment 2 actually came out, people had said that the 5 times test had been removed from the new regulation and therefore we no longer required it. But the actual truth is you can't remove something that's never been there. Amendment 2 simply clarified that using a 1 times test and showing that it tripped within its millisecond capacity was enough to prove that the device was operational. So it shifted from performance testing to functional testing, making sure the device works safely rather than performs quickly. So, what times were supposed to be achieved under the 5 times test? Under product standards, a 30 milliamp RCD device should trip within 40 milliseconds, and that is what manufacturers use to validate their product consistency. Under BS 7671, a 1 times test, it must trip within 300 milliseconds, which I really hope the RCDs you are using do. So that 40 millisecond rule actually lives within a product standard sign-off sheet rather than your EICR test report, for example. Now, like everything with our industry, it's also driven an awful lot by marketing. Now, why would someone use their RCD tripping times as a marketing tool? For example, under the 5 times test, why would you be pushing electricians to check their 5 times test readings and compare your RCD to a competitor's, for example? And this was common practice from a lot of leading brands trying to distance themselves from cheaper, less quality product in the market. In fact, cards on the table, it's something that if you've spoken to me at a trade show, I have also asked you to have a look at. Better performing product will obviously trip more consistently and quicker under a 5 times test. A 5 times test on site, whether it be in a lab or on site, should still operate within 40 milliseconds. Okay, so if your RCD is to standard and is made with the consistency that you would hope from a brand you can trust, it should trip within its 40 millisecond time. Some brands have struggled to reach that on site, so claims have been made, allegedly. I haven't been on site and tested many other brands, I'll be honest with you. We test our own, we know what ours are capable of here at Navitas, and they should all operate within those expected timeframes, which is why we're able to achieve the accreditation and the certification that we do. Others you might find might not, but there may be varying factors on site that actually affect that tripping time. Okay, now this is another reason why on-site guides and things like this have removed the 5 times tripping test from their list of things that you should do on site when testing a board, etc. For example, if we go back and look at a Type A versus a C RCD, which is still something commonly you will find on site, here's the part that people will generally miss. AC devices only respond to pure alternating current leakage. The A device responds to AC and pulsating DC. Now, we're all aware of this. We've been over this many a time on many a video on many a channel. That extra sensitivity can change how that sensing circuit operates under test. So when you hit that Type A device with a 5 times AC test, it might actually read slightly slower than you would expect, even though it's performing perfectly well and is healthy overall and performs well under the 1 times test. And this is why a lot of devices started to fail their 5 times test, which is why a lot of the marketing and all the other noise around it started to subside, because people were reporting that these RCDs weren't compliant or weren't working well enough to pass a 5 times test and therefore couldn't be used on site. So let's be really clear. The 5 times test was never in BS 7671. BS 7671 will tell you to use products from a manufacturing standard where you will find the 5 times test. For example, BS 7671 will tell you to use an RCD, okay, that is made to standard BS EN 61008, or an RCBO, which is made to BS EN 61009. So it will tell you to use these products from this standard. However, it's not written into BS 7671 of that it requires a 5 times test. That is part of the manufacturing standard. So therefore, they've kind of already assumed that the manufacturer has done that to pass it, to make it to that standard, so you don't then have to recreate that on site. You're also not proving speed on site. You're trying to prove safety with your testing. And because of that, if it conforms to its 1 times test and it passes that on site and the test button works, you can sign that RCD off as safe. If you want to go one step further and do a ramp test to test the sensitivity of it, that's a great way of being thorough in your testing on site with your devices, etc. And this is where we get to kind of fly our flag, because we do so much testing before you ever receive the product on every single RCBO or RCD made by Navitas. We don't just test that it works. We don't just test that it passed this 1 times test. We test that it works by every test parameter, and it works within a tolerance level of one another. So the consistency is bang on. That obviously comes with a cost. That also comes with a lot of other things that you have to be able to do yourself, i.e. internal processes, etc., which a lot of brands don't have. And that's usually reflected in the price. And the reason we do this, because the only time that really matters is that one time when there is a fault and that device needs to work and could potentially save someone's life. So guys, we will be doing a slightly sort of a download and a white paper that you can keep on your phone or keep on your computer or whatever, just to give you a bit of a reference point of it. But guys, if you found this useful, please remember, like the video, please share it, subscribe, but also jump in the comments with your feedback. Do you use the 5 times test? Is it something that you feel that if your device wasn't to pass that, you wouldn't use? Let's have a topic about why the 5 times test is important or not important, maybe, and what you are going to do next time you're on site, should you be faced with your testing sheet and which tests you perform. Guys, as always, thank you ever so much. Please don't forget, if you haven't already, we are still in the midst of our 50 board giveaway. So if you haven't already, head over to the website or click the link, which will be in the show notes below, and get over to the website and sign up. All you got to do to enter, subscribe to this YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram, and fill out the form. Until next time, guys, thanks as always. Take care.